Know Thyself is dedicated to the exploration of the most rewarding task an individual can ever embark on, the journey to find oneself. Our intention is to investigate the universal principles that have equipped our species to seek the treasure of all treasures, self-knowledge. With your host, Daniel Powinski and Eduardo Manteca, this is the Know Thyself podcast.
This is my favorite thing of the week, though, man.
Oh, dude, me too, man. Me too, dude. All right. Welcome to the Know Thyself podcast. I'm Eduardo Manteca here with Daniel Powinski.
Hello.
And really excited about what we're going to be talking about, but I guess I'm always excited about what we're going to be talking about, right? So today we'll be discussing the meaning behind a specific nursery rhyme. And I know, Daniel, you're going to go into a little more detail about nursery rhymes and the meaning behind them, or some of these allegories or like things that we learned as children. And in this specific nursery rhyme, though, I think we're going to cover a lot, and I'm really excited to cover a lot. And that nursery rhyme is row, row, row your boat. And so without further ado, I'll let Daniel kind of, speak a little bit about the origin of this nursery rhyme and other nursery rhymes and how they relate to the way we interpret this thing we call life.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, I love that intro, like always. And this is kind of an interesting topic. Again, we're kind of like on this plan of topics we want to cover. And it's a rough plan. It's like a little sheet I've written out that's like chicken scratch. But we have this plan of like podcasts we want to cover, and then certain ones come up, and we just kind of feel this urge to cover this topic because, one, it's a great review about everything we've already processed and kind of gone over. And it's also kind of opening the door to other subjects we're approaching. So it really kind of works as a unique one. And I think that the picking of a nursery rhyme, one of the reasons why we decided to do this is because we have a lot of young parents, teachers that listen to this podcast, and they've reached out to us about, how do we educate our children on these esoteric hermetic principles?
Right.
And, you don't educate a child quite like you educate an adult, right? So we talk about if you sat down, and I'm not saying the child wouldn't understand it, but if you were going to go over the 7 hermetic principles, you almost want to approach it in a different kind of way. And what we're going to look at is these ways that these principles have been approached to us. And again, we have come in contact with them again. So when we do kind of come back around to them in life with a new lens, we see the bigger aspect of it. So that's kind of why we're looking at fairy tales and mostly this nursery rhyme. And that's kind of what we're concentrating on today. And again, it's just a great way to almost impregnate this idea of higher consciousness, truth, a moral understanding into a child. So as they develop, as they grow, they have these strong principles and these guidelines. It's kind of like Aesop's fables as well. These are just guiding stories, nursery rhymes that are easy to remember that, like you said, have a huge impact on life. And we kind of go through life forgetting about these.
Right.
We forget about the significance. And I think that's why, again, I can't wait to talk about like Saturn's return and its role. But I think this is why very much a lot of people, when they heard these, they heard it from somebody older who reconnected with the thing of this. Like maybe it was a grandparent, maybe it was an older teacher. But again, they got softer to it. And what they did is they got more connected back to it, because that's what kind of happens with your Saturn returns. And we'll kind of talk about this whole kind of what this whole life is but a dream state is, and how we go in ebbs and flows of understanding what the dream is and our role within that dream. So that's kind of what we're going to be looking at for today. But I think the first thing we have to do is, before we start breaking this guy down, is we have to hear a beautiful rendition of this song. And Eddie has the most beautiful. When we were in a punk band as kids, he was the singer, and he was also the coolest kid in school. So Eddie's going to give us, I put him on the spot too. I told him we were going to do this, but I didn't tell him I was going to give this big intro for it. But Eddie's going to sing this beautiful nursery rhyme for us, and then we're going to kind of go and break it down.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And what I will do, just to kind of actually make a point about, in regards to what you just said. So you said that an adult, sometimes typically an older adult, will be able to sing this melody to children without there being sort of a hesitation because of such standards that they have, or what they might think others might think of them, which is what you just did to me. So that's what I'm saying. It's a perfect way of you introducing that to me. It's just like, but I really could care less what anyone thinks about my voice. But the nursery rhyme would definitely be sung, in my opinion, more freely when I am singing it to a child, which would go, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
All right.
So, it's not so much the keys that I want to hit, but I want to hit, if you're looking at me, I'm smiling while doing it.
Right.
Which is what I remember from when I learned it. And I was asking Daniel, when do you remember hearing this song? And I really can't think other than my mom. My mom she used to be a school teacher before she was a nurse, but my mom or teachers, obviously in kindergarten, or what grade do you think this really kind of gets introduced?
Preschool or kindergarten. Yeah. I mean, it was early in my life. And I just remember, I've known this song forever, part with a couple of the nursery rhymes and those classic stories. But it was definitely early. Yeah.
And I think, again, to make my point about like not caring about the way in which the person singing sounds like, but more so on the inflection of what they're trying to convey, and that's what I remember is that my teachers would, raise their arms and kind of get the whole classroom to do it. You're completely, unaware of whether or not they were good at singing. So for all those listening out there, you're welcome.
And I love it. But yeah, so yeah, perfect. Let's just kind of go through. And again, one thing we want to bring up is how this episode's going to go is we're going to kind of go over within it the exoteric and the esoteric understanding of this story. So it's going to kind of go deeper and deeper as we progress through this episode. So it's very much like an iceberg. We're going to kind of cover the first top and kind of really just break down the lyrics and then kind of see how deep that base of that iceberg goes. And we're going to go deeper and deeper down to really understand these concepts. And just the idea of how important water and flow is to the human experience and really what it represents. That's going to be something we kind of cover. So first thing I say we do is we kind of just break it down. So I'll let you kind of start with row, row your boat. What was the significance that pulls from you?
Well, I think if I go back to times that are difficult, which there's a lot of those, in our life. And at this point in my life, I can say that, it's probably not, it's not over till it's over. And one thing that this song immediately makes me think about is, the boat being the body that's carried down the flow that is life, or the thoughts, which are the flow as well. And we are the wooden ship. And I think that when you're rowing this ship of yours, or, doing your best to go down a path, we all know the path of least resistance. At least I do remember this even in biology, that's what the body does instinctually. It will try to find the most surface area so it can actually, flow at ease. And I think rowing your boat, just putting a little effort into it, because you are a living, breathing individual, should come with some effort, which is the row, but gently, and more importantly, down the stream. The song doesn't say up the stream, and I think that it is obvious, if you want to really go deep, that if you can see whatever is beyond the embankment or the surface that's outside of the flow of water, you want to probably explore it. You probably want to get out of your boat and do different things. You want to maybe let your curiosity take you upstream, and be a little vigorous with your strokes now. And I think so that first part of the song, is just kind of a gentle reminder of rowing gently down the stream. It's like, hey, before you kind of give yourself a heart attack or really take this to an unexplored region, maybe there's a reason why it's supposed to go in this direction. And maybe it does require a little of your effort, but not every bit of your effort. Because, towards the end, and I'll let you finish the other half of the song, but life is but a dream,
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so the rest of it is merrily, 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 life is but a dream, correct?
Right.
So
yeah. No, and man, I really love how you were speaking about, the rowing of the boat. And it is, this life requires the act of will for you to row your own boat. And, the boat does represent the body and the experience and that journey to kind of travel through. And the idea that we need to decide how we're going to take that direction and how important that direction is. And, I like the part where you brought up as you can't go too fast or life kind of passes you by. But also you can't just stay on shore as well.
Right.
And it's kind of interesting. A wooden boat that's tied to shore rots away faster than a boat that's at sea. Like when it's just sitting there, it rots away. And that very much is a great metaphor for life right there, because that's true in that experience. You can go too fast or you can never ever embark on the journey in itself. And again, we kind of decide, through that idea that it's really that rhythm of that row that is so important. And the idea that you have to row your own boat. Nobody can row your boat for you, and you can't row your boat from anybody else.
Right.
And it's just that really important aspect of what that means and what that kind of means on the journey. And then the idea, the merrily aspect of it, I think really kind of alludes to the idea that you have a free will decision to act how you need to act. And, you can't control always the circumstances. You can't control the waves. You can't control the wind, but you control how you react to those situations. And that's where we kind of get that free will principle from. And that's really, really important in this whole understanding. And then we go even deeper, what that boat represents. And it's that the body, it's the self, and the interesting aspect of to row a boat, where you stand in that boat and how you stand in the middle of that boat. Right. So you can learn from all your past experiences as you roll with that rhythm and that correct flow upstream. But you're living in the present. You're living in the middle of the boat to row. So you're reflecting on the past and you're looking over your shoulder to make sure you go to the right direction, but you're not stuck in one aspect or the other. You're not anxiously waiting for the past. You are not living in the past. You're not
Right.
living in the, anxious about the future or depressed about the past. You're in that current, that slow, that middle path, that what you would call in Eastern mysticism or philosophy, that flow state of being in the now. And that's that whole process of finding yourself and being in the moment, knowing that it's in the moment that you can actually affect the change. That's why we talked about causality. And this is where causality comes in, because when you're in that, what you would call that flow state, or that, aligned with self, with that truth, as I think, so I feel, so I act, that's when you're able to, really direct where you're going in the future. And like we talk with that hero's journey, the more you travel down that path and you do a good job of it, you're creating influence and mentorship for others. So again, you can't row anybody's boat. You can't do anybody's hero journey for them, but you can show them the rhythm and the discipline that you have, and that's going to help motivate them. And that's another thing we were talking about last week, and just how important that aspect is.
Yeah, no, I think that it's applicable to all phases of life. One of the things that I'm trying to always, I guess, incorporate in my life is thinking about how I handled certain situations that, came up. For instance, one thing I used to joke about when I was a kid is my dad was very much an analytical person that would probably get mad at me for crossing the road, and every car that could have hit me didn't hit me. So his anger would be, or his concern would be, you just gave into life, and it just so happened that luck got you to the other side of the sidewalk. Beware though, because you won't always have luck on your side. And in that moment, he's kind of telling me about how if I stay very careless or stay in a state of carelessness, you will get hit by a car. And then, well, what is all this existence for if you're just going to go ahead and casually let yourself go, or at least, put yourself in a moment of risk? And I understand that he's not wrong, but there's also something about how you approach that conversation. And to be more specific is, don't try to defend yourself for living in a state of flow and getting to where you needed to get to when it's your boat on your stream. And I think that some people want to mimic whatever you have done, or want you to mimic what they are doing to go down this path, which is what we call life, and if you're going down the stream, people will tell you which way to, steer your boat and which way to anchor your boat and which way to row your boat. And unfortunately, we let that happen very often. Very often people kind of feel discouraged to go down the stream the way they are meant to go down, because others around them are telling them you're doing it wrong. And it's very it's tough. It really is tough, because it's a balance for sure, especially like in the story or my interpretation of it between my father and I. It's like, he's my father, right? So he's like, you're my son, you're precious to me. But it was kind of funny to me. I would giggle because I would literally be like, you're so wound up that you're not understanding that I knew I wasn't going to get hit by a car. And this never happened, by the way. I never crossed the road like this, but I did do a lot of silly things as a kid that made my dad just kind of go like, I don't understand like why you don't have value in this moment or value in this thing. And I was like, well, look, I'm just flowing at my own rate, and it's not your rate, and I think that, yeah, anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, no, man, I think that's a great way to say it. And I like how you brought up the idea of, the importance is you're making yourself better every day. But again, you're staying on your boat, within your own boat, with your own paddles, and you're doing the work. That explains perfectly the social situation that we have today. Because what do we hear from the media about political parties, about these organized religions, about this idea of money or scientific, like the worshiping at the altar of this old science that we study now? It's the work's too hard. You can't paddle. Oh, there's gonna be big waves. Oh, have you seen those waves? Well, you should be really scared about them. Did you not see the news about the waves? Did you not see the news about the winds? You're just not gonna make it. So what you should do is let us tow you. So just throw me the rope and just let me kind of guide you. But I promise you, I'm towing you to the other side. I'm towing you to where you're trying to go. And that individual that's weak, that doesn't know thyself, doesn't understand that this is a personal journey, attaches themselves. And then what they do is they start to recognize themselves as this, and they will defend it at any cost. And this is the idea of how people will fight for these false ideas and these false things, and they'll fight to the death. And we've seen this happen since the beginning of time, but it's just they're defending that rope that's attached to a boat that's not theirs, and they don't want to recognize that they have to cut that rope and they have to do this work themselves. So beyond even the idea of, you can't paddle somebody else's boat, you have to make sure that you're in charge of your own boat. And that's so important. So I really like that you brought that up. Because they'll tell you that the paddle's too hard and, you're not going to find the truth anyway. So just follow our truth, right? So just join the party, red or blue, whatever color you want to be, or whatever religious symbol you want to do. But just make sure when you see another boat, you don't give them any respect. And if we need to fight, we're all going to fight together.
Right.
It's that divide and conquer kind of situation, when really we should be on this journey to find, our own path and find our own rhythm, and really understand, again, that journey to find ourselves and get to that other side, get back home.
Yeah, I know. Well said. I really do. I completely understand your analogy of the rope that is being thrown at us at a very young age and suggested for us to just pull on. And I know that when in this flow state, at least, I'm sure people who have succeeded by the standards of why we as earthlings think of success, I suppose, in this monetary sense of success. It's like, well, how did he get there? And we try to all emanate how she, became the best at this one thing, or he became the best at this one thing. And once again, you're wasting the precious time you have on that river trying to emanate what someone did on the day that the wind blew such a way for them, and the way they actually gently rode down their stream. Just maybe that's the only thing you should emanate, is question like, did they do too much, or did they do just enough of what they're supposed to? And most people will tell you at the end of the road, and I can tell you this by the people that I've worked with in my geriatric career, which is seeing people at the end of the road, at the end of life, and the frustration of the time they spent trying to mimic someone else's flow to get to the same place with the same equal successes along the way, only to find out that what they did all along is what they were meant to do for themselves in their own boat, and it's a rough thing to kind of realize that not till the end of your life, because when you get there, you're like, oh, I already see the shores coming up. The river is no longer going to flow. from here at this point, and my boat is literally falling apart, and it's just that there's not gonna be another opportunity here in this physical sense, and that was always hard to witness, but that was something I took away a lot from these people who they were like, "Hey, how old are you?" And I tell them, I'm in my mid-20s, and that was the only thing they, in unsolicited fashion, would give me advice on. They're just like, "Hey, I hope you're just not banging your head against the wall too much to get to wherever you're doing. You seem like a pretty happy guy, so whatever you're doing, just keep doing that." Mm-hmm. Although that morning I was like, "What am I doing? Like this position that I have right now is created by the company I work for. Like I don't even remember getting a degree in this." Like I was breaking my own path down into such a like analytical sense where I was like, I'm not giving myself worth because no one in society has put a worth on this. Right. On this position, on this way of doing, on this way of rowing a boat. You know what I mean? It's like, if this is what it takes for you to be in your success, then that's all you need to worry about, kid. Yeah. You don't have to worry about like if your strokes are 3 times as fast as the guy next to you. You know what I mean? But it's hard to undo. You know what I mean?
Right. Or of course too, and they tell us how to live, and they give us these what you would call like false idols for these kids to be like, oh, that's what life is about. Mm-hmm. Life's about being rich and famous, and I just have to get to the top. Like we look at, Forbes top 50 and we just idolize them, and we don't look anything about their character or the actions that they do in this world. Right. And it's just because we're told who our idols should be. So I think this is the time to embark. Are you ready to go on the esoteric?
I am.
Okay. So perfect. So again, that was kind of the exoteric. So that's probably more of what you kind of would hear about that nursery rhyme. And what we're going to do now is we're going to really take it down to the fundamental principles, and we're going to go a little bit deeper down this iceberg and just see how deep that this actually information goes. And we're also going to kind of connect it with another classic story at the end. One thing we need to understand, and one thing we really, as esoteric occult students, one thing I really want you to start kind of envisioning and seeing the connections on is the use of water and bodies of water. And from this idea, the stream, and we see stream a lot in Eastern mythology, and in Western consciousness, like with the Freemasonic Lodge, they kind of describe this a little bit more as an ocean, but it's the same kind of principle. And so water is going to be something we're going to really look at today, and the significance of water. And on that note, we really want to bring up, and I know I brought this up before, the importance of etymology. So again, there's 3 ways to understand a word. There's the definition, and that's kind of the provided defining of the word that we are mostly all aware of. Then there's the etymology, and that's where this word came from. Okay, so this is the root of the word from whatever language it came from. So it'll come from Latin. It could have come from European languages. It could have come from ancient Greek, Hindu, like all the different Islamic words, right? And that's where you kind of really start getting deeper into that definition. But one thing you also need to be aware of, and again, we've expressed this on this class, but we're really going to go deep into this understanding today, is the phonetic meaning of a word. So if a word phonetically sounds like another word, or you use the same word that has 2 different definitions, you have to understand that if this whole universe is a vibration and it's all electromagnetic energy, mm-hmm. that vibration of the word makes up just as big of the definition as the actual definition. This is the vibration of the word. So really you want to do, and English is a great language for this because it's mm-hmm. a makeup of so many different languages. Be aware when one word has multiple different uses. Okay. And that's something we're going to really look at today, and how that experience works. And a lot of this stuff, when it comes to the understanding of water, will get you a better understanding of this whole conscious makeup that we find ourselves in. So again, whether you're through an Eastern mythology where you're kind of studying this more as a river, or the Western mythology, esoteric, like the Freemasonic, you're kind of studying this as an ocean. Okay. And this is the ocean of consciousness. So it means more than just water. It's almost like, if you want to take it up to the next level, it's like limitless space. Mm-hmm. Okay. Like if you travel to outer space to a limitless location, and then you want to take that even deeper, it's the electronic makeup that constructs this 5 sense experience so we can go on the journey to find our soul. But it's all electric, and it's all about energy. Okay. So when they're talking about an ocean, or they're talking about a river, they're really talking about this energetic field that we find ourselves in. and our role within that and how our energy is kind of connected to it. So the sea of consciousness idea is really this 5 sense makeup that we have that does act like a dream, but and we'll get to it, it's the dream you wanted to dream. And that's what we'll kind of, how we'll end this class period today. So a little bit of foreshadow. But I was teaching creative writing today, so we talked about foreshadow. So I wanted to drop that. But really this idea of this ocean of consciousness, this ocean of potential. We always talk about cause and effect, about, collapsing the wave. And how do you do that? Because the causality, there's infinite potential. That's kind of that yin factor in the yin yang, right? It's that female limitless potential. And then that wave collapses. And that's, again, why we talk about that ocean of consciousness. If you ever see me and Eddie talking about and I collapse this wave, because there's infinite potential. It depends on what waves are collapsing. So again, we're starting to see the significance of this ocean. And Eastern mythology is really going to study on this as the stream of consciousness, and almost like the stream of thoughts that are coming through your mind, how it's a constant stream from the moment you wake up, correct? Right. And we're really going to get into words and how important these words are. So, just right off the bat, you talk about, what do you use to row your boat? You use an oar, right? An oar. Well, where else have you heard the word oar? Oar changes the direction of your life and your experience. I could do this, or I could do that. Just like an oar changes the direction of a boat, that powerful word also changes your ability to think. I can think this, or I can think that. I can feel this, or I can feel that, or I can do this, or I can do that.
Right.
Again, you're talking about the shifting of yourself within this ocean of consciousness. Okay. So you're traveling through this ocean of consciousness. And again, we perceive time as linear. So it's, but it's not, it's like this circle, like almost like this ocean flow. And even how, when we're rowing our boat, the idea of, and this is something that you kind of have to really kind of tap into that right side of your brain, but you are getting, as you row your boat, you are also getting pulled through time. Waves are collapsing that you can't go back to. You can't go to the past, and you can't live in the future, right? You are getting pulled into this moment, just like you're getting towed. So you are getting towed, but you're getting towed by the universal pull, and that's the flow, and that's kind of what you want to connect with, right? So this consciousness is the sea of potential that we live ourselves in. And this is, again, why we want to be in the present moment and see all the waves that we've collapsed on our boat, all the changes when we did this or that with our oars to change our direction to get us to the ending that we want to go to. And as you're pushing that boat, right, what do you see from what does that boat make? That boat makes a wake. Awake. This is why when you pass away and you're at a funeral, you have a wake. You are looking at the fabric that this person cut through consciousness and the waves that they developed and collapsed. So this is a wake. So that's why when somebody passes away in the West, you have a meeting, you have a group setting where you have a wake and you talk about the experiences and the waves that this individual collapsed within their life. Okay. Take that a step further. What does a spiritual individual call themselves? Awake. I'm awake. I see my wake. I see the waves I collapse. I see my journey, compared to somebody who's asleep. They're not even seeing their wake, and they might not even be making a wake, right? Or they're seeing the wake that somebody else is pulling on them, and that they can't see the future and understand how really this causality works. They're thinking that this wake that they're being pulled on is the wake that they're following, right? But this is why in a funeral, you go to a wake. It's literally the cutting of consciousness, or cutting through the stream of consciousness that we're going through, okay? And so that's going to give you a good perspective of, again, how these words are used. And we can go into commerce and what, we're going to have a whole episode on water and how its relations with commerce, and how commerce is really the exchange of energy, and really how this even applies. There's a reason why your money is a currency and energy is a currency, right? And there's a current, and we were talking about earlier, what controls the current? Well, the banks do, so again, you really want to be on the lookout when they're using words that repeat themselves.
Right.
There's usually a huge spiritual experience that goes with this. And again, what do these social engineers love to do? It's all about energy, and it's all about taking energy and recycling energy for their own purpose.
Right.
But that's all we're talking about. And this is also why when you stand on an ocean or stand in front of a river, it doesn't matter what age you are, there's that moment of awness where you just find peace. And so many people just like, I just need to go to moving water. I just need to go to a place of natural water. And this is what that calling is. Not only is it a beautiful scenario, it's connecting you back into that understanding that this is what life is. It's this huge ocean of consciousness, and you are a master creator. You are the music maker in how these waves collapse. And it's your free will decisions. As you think, so you feel, so you act, which is going to create the wake that's going to get you home. Right. And you want your wake to be a beautiful conversation. You want it to be a celebration rather than, like you were saying, some of these older individuals that you fall in line with, that you worked with, who were not proud of their wake because they realized that they were hooked up to somebody else or hooked up to some idea that never really represented them. And that's another thing. That boat, everything you need is in that boat. That's your internal self, right? They're going to give us, there's so many distractions of gold and riches and everything, but what are they going to do to your boat? That's going to sink your boat. You want to keep your boat light. Like, again, have shelter, have food, have water, and make sure everybody else has that as well. But there's a limit to it. There's this great graph that shows, there's a certain happiness that a human reaches when they have food, shelter, and water. And you can't not have all three of those things and reach this happiness. Like, it's just something we need. We need food, water, and shelter. But the interesting thing about that graph is if you have double the food, double the shelter, and double the water, your happiness doesn't double. It just kind of slowly goes up because you get comfortable. But this idea in the West is, if I'm happy with this much shelter, food, and water, if I times that by 100, I'm going to be 100 times happier. And the scale doesn't actually work like that,
Right.
And this is, again, what brings us back to the idea of the boat, because everything you need is inside. Okay, I can't wait to talk about Wizard of Oz because I talk about it all the time. But Dorothy had those shoes on from the beginning of that journey when she got into the land of color. Right? She just had to tap her shoes, and she didn't know that the power was within her the entire time. It wasn't this fake wizard that was on the screen or the man behind the curtain. And that's something we have to understand too. There's not an external savior. It's internal. Your connection with God. This as above, so below. Not only do you partake in consciousness, you are consciousness. So when you get into that flow state, you're connecting with the energy that is pulling you and actually like towing you to where you're supposed to go. And it's just a fascinating thing. And that's, again, why, there's like terrible tragedies that are happening in this world, but it's very important for us not to fall down in our complex fear state and always be trying to figure out how we can improve this in consciousness and how we can overcome the situations that we're finding ourselves in through that neocortex, that highest self,
Right.
And connecting with that highest self.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's funny when I hear you say this, I know that, to kind of give you an idea of what I'm about to talk about, there's a way that Ralph Waldo Emerson talks about, do not hold yourself to the ideas of the past or the beliefs or traditions, but lean into the change. And one of the things that, and within reading that I like about it is, it's really hard to convince people in the present about basically how not to feel like you're being negligent. So right now, I think there's definitely a lot of, like you said, difficult things occurring in everyone's lives, but I don't think it's never been that way. Right now it does seem a little more heightened, but one of the things that I want to keep telling people is, within this state of your own potential or with your own abilities, and in this case, within your own boat, you can affect many more by leading the example of being on your own wake. So when you are awake and you are basically heading down the stream of basically of the flow that you're supposed to be on, others can mimic that by just letting go. And I know a lot of people want to say, well, what do you mean by letting go? And there's a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson that I wanted to read. And this is how I've kind of felt. And again, this is where I've been accused of negligence about how I'm affecting my surroundings, but I disagree because I tend to sort of live in a dreamer world, which is the dream that we are in right now, and just being happy about the fact that I have the opportunity to live in that dream state and do something good with it. And this quote kind of talks about, it says, standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air and uplifted into infinite space. All mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. I see all. The currents of the universe being circulated through me, as I am part of the particle of God. And I might have not read that correctly, but I just really wanted to get that message across, is that, we're all sort of encompassed within everything that is surrounding us. And in the sake of the analogy or the allegory about this boat, we are the boat and nature is the river. And I think, we exist together within as one. And I think anytime we've ever separated nature from that, and we become our own idea, or just the I self, you don't really find any peace or any harmony or anything good out of it, because you're really not flowing within the path that you were meant to be on. And so that's why I like that quote, is that, learning that there is nothing more than just this infinite space above us, and we're part of that, and that we have this purpose here to really, I wouldn't just say enjoy this existence, but this is where I was going back, if I'm all over the place, about negligence. Don't let people accuse you of negligence because you are on this path or this flow, and the way that you feel internally, you're doing your best. And you're going to get a lot of criticism for that. People are going to say you're not angry enough about what's happening on the shoreline right now. Mm-hmm. But what's been happening on the shoreline has been happening forever.
Yeah.
And I don't know. So I don't want to give any advice. I'm not here to solicit or to give anyone any advice. I'm just saying that is something personally that I've experienced within these metaphors that we're describing. But yeah.
Yeah, no, man, I love the Emerson, and again, the whole transcendental movement, and would really recommend any individual really looking into the transcendental movement of America and Europe as well at that same time. But it's just this beautiful, it's really a good expression of us in the West kind of connecting with Eastern mythology. And I think they do a good job of honoring all the great wisdom that does come from the East. And it's just a beautiful subject. And I really like the idea of how you describe the boat in the water as really one thing. And that's the aspect. We have this, this illusion of separation. And that's kind of what they talk about, like in Maya. It's that it's not so much this is an illusion and this doesn't matter. This experience very much matters. This is how your soul evolves. But the idea that you are tricking yourself to not know that you are the boat and you are the water at the same time. You are consciousness. And what the problem is we recognize those Saturn boundaries as pure existence, and we don't transcend them. And again, Saturn makes that tough for us to transcend them. That's why we have those barriers, and we need those constructs for this experience. But it's so important that we understand that, because we don't understand that our true nature is divine. The same as the nature of the universe. We live cut off from this wisdom. So we have this veil that separates the material world from the invisible spiritual world. And we're fooled by it, but we don't understand that not only are we the microcosm, but we are also the macrocosm. And that's that misunderstanding we have. And that's what these transcendentalists did. And the Eastern philosophies did such a good idea of is, no, you are one. And that's that oneness. And that's that universal idea. And again, to kind of go break down some words, that whole game and this operation keeps us divided. And divided is a very interesting word. So what it divides us from is the source of us being shown who we really are. And just breaking down that word. So die is Latin and it means God. So it's another word for God. So die is Latin for God. And vide is French, and I'm probably mispronouncing that. And I know we have some French listeners, so please, if you want to send me a voice note, it'd be like, no, you mispronounced that. means empty or devoid. So when we're divided, we're empty and devoid of God. And that's that whole situation. We're divided, we're separated from that whole consciousness. And again, perceiving beyond this conscious and understand that we're the micro and the macro. And again, this kind of comes down to that brain balance and why you need to activate that left side and that right side of your brain. And that's what sovereignty is all about. It's all about the idea that, it's what makes you individual, right? An individual is somebody who is not divided. In is not, and dividare is divided. So it's not divided. So it's this whole experience that we kind of go down. And it's really just kind of that idea of realizing that not only are we the boat, but we're the ocean too. And that ocean is much more than we understand. And we have much more of a say on what happens on that ocean. And I think that's a great way to kind of look at it. So, the one, as we kind of finish up this discussion, I do want to kind of connect another story that kind of helps explain that last line. Life is but a dream. So we'll just kind of roll into that. Does that work with you? So this is a very old story, and you find it in every culture. You find it in Egypt. You find it in pre-colonial Africa. You find it in the South American native civilizations. And it goes by many different names, but this really will kind of help us understand that last line. Okay. And the story either goes by the prince or the pearl. Okay. And what this story states is there's a king from the East, and this location is really important. It doesn't matter if it's like a really Eastern country, like the kingdom is always coming from the East, who's going to send his son to Egypt or any kind of Western area to find a pearl that's buried deep within the ocean. Okay. So the son goes on this journey to find this pearl for his father. As soon as he arrives in Egypt, or wherever the landing spot is, they give him a drink. And the son, when he drinks this and it touches his tongue, he forgets all memory of who he is. He forgets that he's the son of a king. He starts living just a normal life, starts dealing with low vibrational experiences, lives as a drunkard, as a beggar, low level of life, and just doesn't understand that he's a king and that he is more than this. And his father in the East sends messages, right? He's never forgot about his son. So he sends messages, and he sends guides, and maybe even sends like prophets and stories to try to wake his son up. And he's just trying, and it's those angels sitting on your story, always yelling like, awake, awake, awake. And again, this is very popular in Gnostic mythology, and we'll kind of get into what Gnostic mythology is, but just, awake, awake, awake. And then all of a sudden, the son wakes up, and he goes and he gets that pearl that's buried deep beneath the sea, which again, that sea represents that subconscious. He grabs that pearl, retains it, and starts to make the journey back to his father. And this is really, really important for us to understand of this idea of waking up of the false dream that we find ourselves in, and really understanding that this dream is about finding that pearl. Like we walk around the whole idea of Rumi, how he talks about, from tavern to tavern, I'm a walking around drunkard. What he's talking about is drunk with the idea that I'm not really seeing why I'm here. I forgot that my father's a king. I forgot that I'm a prince or a princess. I've lost this idea, this prince who has lost his identity. And this is the story of every conscious individual, even unconscious individual, right? So it's this idea of waking up from the fake dream, which is this 9-to-5 rat race, right? Having your having your toe attached, getting towed by somebody else, creating your own wake, and really waking up from this false dream and living the real dream that you're supposed to experience. And really this aspect of going from this darkness that he found himself in and making that journey through the light. And again, he had to do it himself. He had help from these messages, from these guides, but it was really, really important that he was able to retain that. And to kind of touch on, to kind of further this idea of this dream, Alan Watts has this amazing lecture. And in this lecture, he talks about if you could dream any dream you wanted. And in this premise, in the breakdown of this lecture, he talks about if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted, say you were going to go to bed tonight and you could dream anything you wanted. And let's say you could, because dreams don't align to the time fabric of our reality, you can live 75 years in an 8-hour sleep, right? So he speaks about how your first dream, you're going to get all the pleasures and all the experiences that you want. You're going to have the most beautiful partner. You're going to have all the riches, right? Because you can define this dream and create this dream of whatever you want. You can have all these riches. You can have all these amazing experiences. And after 2 or 3 weeks, every night living a whole lifetime of going through all these experiences, you're going to get tired of that. And you're going to move into this like adventure realm where you're going to go on adventures in this dream time in these 75 years where you might be fighting dragons, fighting evil people. He has a great line of like blowing things up, right? Like you're going to live this adrenaline lifestyle.
Right.
Well, eventually all these paths that you would live out, you're going to collapse all these ways. You're going to live out all these experiences. And then you're going to come to a point where you're going to almost create this new wrinkle where you're like, you know what, tonight I'm not going to know that I'm dreaming. So I can't actually have this experience. So I just want to know that I'm not even going to know that I'm dreaming so I can control it. So then you're going to live this new life every night. And you're going to do that for a couple of weeks. Eventually, after all these dreams, you're going to find yourself in this very moment where we are with either your headphones on or this voice coming through the microphone, and you're going to be here. And this is what you're going to dream because this is the experience that you need to find your pearl.
Right.
And you need to be aware of that. And we need to be conscious of that because this is what we're here to do. This experience you find yourself in, it is a dreamscape. It is a 5-strict construct. It's a 5-sense construct for a reality, but this is the journey your soul needs to go on, and it needs to be your journey. And this is where you would collapse. Even if you could do anything you wanted, after a while, you would find yourself in this very moment trying to find that pearl. And that's just such an important aspect to kind of understand. And this story is something that goes from the beginning of time. Like I said, this story's been told over and over. The story of the pearl, the idea of that king sending off his son, okay? And the idea that you're the son. There's a beautiful movie that we can kind of talk about. And it's such a good movie, and it's Terrence Malick, which is a director I talk about, and the movie's called Knight of Cups. And the beauty thing about this is if you really want to understand the story of the pearl in modern day sense and how this kind of works and what the experience and distractions are in our life, which really is kind of what we talked about. It's this idea of money. It's this idea of fame. It's this idea of power, which none of this stuff you really hold on to anyways, nor does it fill your cup and actually, satisfy the soul. He covers all this experience in just the trailer. He takes you through the whole story of the pearl. And now, if you want to watch the movie, you can. It's the really elongated version of the pearl. But Terrence Malick is one of the few individuals that you can say is a light occultist. So where you have the dark occultists, and we talked about this before, who make horror movies for the trailers to put those negative thoughts into your subconscious, Terrence Malick is aware that not everybody's going to watch his movie, so he's going to actually put the message of his movie in his trailer. And watch that trailer. It's called The Knight of Cups. It's like 2 minutes long, and watch the experience of the journey, and you'll see everything that we're talking about. It wakes up with an individual who is speaking to himself, and he doesn't know where he was. He doesn't know who he even was when he was younger anymore. Like, he lost touch of that childhood aspect. He's living for experience. Okay. He's got an individual telling him, that's a perfect line, "Let me tell you about you." And how often we hear that in our society growing up, from teachers to the media, like, "Let me tell you about you." Or even this like false science doctrine that's supported by corporations of, "Let me tell you who you are. You're this," what do they call us? This parasite living on Earth. Look what you've done to the environment. Look what you've done this. And it's the whole blame game that puts on us, right? Let me define you for you, when really a sovereign individual defines himself, right? So that's just this great line. And then there's a female that whispers to him, You're not in love with life, you're in love with experience. And you can just kind of feel it. And the energy of the song is just building up, building up, building up. And then it crashes. And again, you have the image of water, and it's a wave. Okay. The first water you see in this scene is actually water coming out of his shower head onto his head. It feels very artificial, right? And that's kind of how we get this artificial spirituality and these artificial awakenings. It's not really true. And it's just these like placebos or these fake awakenings where people are like, I would call that like social justice warriors who think they're actually helping out, but they're really just supporting another cause in that aspect, right? We have this, when the beat kind of drops, we have this huge ocean, and that kind of represents the rebirth, and also that idea of diving down for that pearl. And what that pearl means is, again, it's that ocean of consciousness, but also your subconscious. And that's what he's diving down to that pearl to get. It's an internal journey, right? We know the prince doesn't actually dive down into the ocean to get this. He dives down in himself through his subconscious, learning himself, knowing thyself. And that's going to be able to what makes him obtain that pearl, right? And that pearl is self-knowledge. It's sovereignty. It's freedom. It's the alignment to truth, right? And then that journey back to the king, which is really, that's going to really signify the idea that you have to, once you find this, the journey's not over. Now you have to continue, and you have to hold that pearl right at your heart, make the correct decisions, align yourself with truth. And from this prospect in, the trailer changes, and, he goes from this idea of, there's like a quote in the background that says, once the soul was holy and it had wings and could soar to heaven. And he's almost through the end of it, he's having a dialogue with himself. It's like his higher self talking to his lower self. And this is what that pearl is. And this is what self-knowledge is. It's peace. It's truth. It's understanding. And that's what you get from this self-knowledge, and the last thing he's telling his higher self is telling his lower self is, go from darkness into the light. And that's what this whole journey is about. It's about going down, getting that pearl, coming back up, and then taking it back to the king, right? The return to self, from lower self to higher self. And the idea that we are good individuals and we can do this by, and how we justify that and how we validate that is through our free will decisions and rowing our own boats.
Yeah. Well said. I really couldn't agree more with everything that we've sort of covered. And I know we can break down the way in which we can row this boat in life multiple times. I mean, we could probably do this in all, I know I can dissect it in many, many ways, but it is something that I definitely believe is hard to not grasp, but if you haven't lived it, then it's hard to understand it. And those who have lived it, in this case, are people at the end of their life, which is why you will always find a grandfather being the favored individual or grandmother of a young child, because one is at the beginning of that current and one is at the end of the current. And the one that's at the end knows that the child, as long as he flows and understands that this life is meant for an experience that we are all here to have, the easier you live that experience, the easier it'll be to flow down that stream to the end of the line to return back home. And I think that that's what makes things challenging along the way, is the distractions along the sides or the sidelines, or even the change in the current of the water. But as Daniel said, we have the free will decision to make a choice as to how to row our boats, and yeah, like I said, I know we could just keep dissecting this in so many ways. And I have several examples that I can tell you from friends of mine. I mean, I'm in my 30s right now, but I know friends of mine who I just can't find I can't find a way to explain things to them, not because I don't have a way of speaking that is understandable, but because I don't have a way to relay the message that while they're in their own boat, it's up to them on how they choose to flow down this stream and how to row it. And I have a lot of friends who've asked me, well, what did you do and how can I do what you've done? And once again, if you find yourself in a position like mine, it's very tricky, because you will find people who you've known for years, desperate for an answer as to why they don't have happiness in their life. And the only answer I ever have for them is, look, it might sound selfish, but I'm doing what I need to do for myself to get to where I need to get to. You know, I've told a friend of mine when I started my video production company, I never started it for any recognition or any way of, you know, having someone admire my work, but more so, I've heard, I think Yvon Chouinard, who's the founder of Patagonia, said this before, but that's where I've heard this. But he says, you know, the cure for depression is action. So what I had going on in my current state, I had to change. And what that change was to be in so many ways more childlike. And that put me in ventures of, you know, in the case of like video production, but it was never for me. It was just to show other people that we can connect and that we can live this life less less of a serious fashion. And that's what's led me down my path of what I do, whether it's within the arts or whether it's in a relationship with someone, is I had to just find what really worked for me in my boat. And then, you know, hopefully be the example for others so they can also get to where they need to be with less turbulence, you know, because I really don't have any other thing to say to them. I feel bad when I see someone and I say, you know, what ails thy brother, you know, because I don't know how else to say it, you know, and it's rough. But again, I know, not to get dark, there's a positive thing about all this, and that's that we're all going to go. One of the most beautiful things to realize or to recognize is we may not know what happens after our physical body leaves this place, but we do know that it will. And so once you figure that out, you don't have much time to be upset about all the things going on. So if you can find a way to flow towards that end of the self, or at least the hard self, you'll find things to be a lot more beautiful in your surroundings. You know what I mean? The surroundings outside of this river that you're flowing down. You'll be like, wow. That's what this all looks like.
Absolutely, man. And I think that raises the importance, you know, we have to know thyself. This is the most important thing to do in the entire evolution of consciousness. Again, we talk about it, you know, when you go up, you level somebody else up. And when they level up, you have the ability to level up. Okay. This is something we need to be aware of. And again, when we talk about that stream of consciousness and that ocean of consciousness, the turbulence of this consciousness comes from the decisions as an aggregate that we are making. And the individuals that are towed to the wrong boats are making these waves of destruction that's making it harder for us to go on this journey to return home to that king. So again, your ability to strengthen out, do your own path, become independent, become a sovereign individual, that also is lowering the stream, and it's making it less hectic and less waves and less wind that's causing destruction. So the best thing you can do is to go deep within yourself, find yourself, go from darkness, get through the light, and make sure that you are doing the correct actions to know thyself.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well said.
So,
yeah,
man, Bo, it's like all aboard the truth boat.
All aboard.
Truth. Yes. Oh man,
that's great.
So good. But yeah, stuff. All aboard. And again, I would love for you guys are so amazing. And one thing we were going to talk about is maybe setting up like small group, like Zoom meetings where we can kind of talk about this stuff, because this would be a topic that I would love to hear from our listeners. Because again, we have individuals that are new to the spiritual world, and we have really, really seasoned individuals that are really dedicated occultists and esoteric students of whatever craft they are. And both of you guys, when you guys when you send me messages, there's amazing merit and there's amazing content that kind of comes within them. So we really do want to kind of make this more of a community thing. And that's going to be something to kind of look out for in the future. But yeah, we love sharing this information with you. We love spending this time with you. And again, high five through the radio waves, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, yeah, with that being said, until next time.